We have really been digging deep into the Torah over the past month. It is my intention that everyone that follows this ministry is given proper instruction of the Word. There are too many voices out here speaking rubbish. In the times that we're in, it is highly important that we focus on the truth and truly understand Yahuah. Over these past 4 or 5 videos, we haven't dealt with anything too hard to bear. We haven't dealt with anything trying to prove our salvation. We have just dealt with learning more about Yah and what He desires. We understand more about how He has led His people and the culture that they had. It is very important that we come to a more biblically defined faith that understands Yahuah through the Word and not by traditions of men and religion. If you ever needed to find a church, it's not that hard to find, I bet. Go out of your house, and not too far from you, you will find some religious institution. What is hard to find are the ones who truly love Yah and are not living in untruths and false doctrines and false traditions. The falsehoods come because people just don't truly understand the Word. Most of them completely reject the Torah and act like it completely is done away with. This is false doctrine that comes from Satan. Yah's laws are still here, and they will not pass away until all is fulfilled. It is important that you understand how He led Israel. It is important that you understand what He loves and what He hates. So now that we went through many important topics, we are going to go more into the laws and understand how He has commanded Israel. If we understand this, it makes it easier to understand Yah and to serve Him. As you go through this, I really want you to think about the doctrine that goes around saying that we don't need to know His law or even keep it. Ask yourself if He is okay with us still rejecting these laws that He had for Israel. As you do your own reflection and not listening to other people, you will see, of course, that we must still keep these laws. You will recognize that His feelings about these things have never gone away. Just our awareness about how He views these things have gone away because we have rejected His Torah. In this video, we're going to go over the laws He led Israel under and learn more about how we are to serve and be more obedient and aligned to Yahuah. We will continue to learn more about His Torah. Let's begin. Okay, so in this part of the lesson about the Torah, we are simply going to understand how Yah guided Israel. They were under laws and commands that spoke about a great deal of things. It's important that you understand these things because this is how He guided and directed them. If you want to be in alignment with Him, you cannot object to these things. These things must now be a part of your culture because you understand what Yahuah loves and what He hates. The first thing we will start with is the main basis of how we must conduct ourselves. This command is written and spoken of many times, so it must be the foundation. We are to guard the laws. You shall observe my judgments and keep my ordinances, to walk in them. I am Yahuah your Elohim. You shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, which if a man does, he shall live by them. I am Yahuah. Leviticus chapter 18 verses 4 through 5. His ordinances and statutes are decrees, their laws and acts of a permanent nature. His judgments refer to judicial decisions involving situations that might not be addressed in the statutes. What you need to understand is that through the ordinances and the judgments of Yahuah, Yasharel, Israel, would know how to live. These laws are what He wanted them to live by. Yahuah gave them the law as a way of life on all levels, physically, morally, spiritually, and relationally. He wanted Yasharel to guard His commands. Now, it is true that because we now have Messiah, we can receive the gift of the Holy Spirit and be led by His Ruach. But this does not change that we are to guard His laws. Through His Spirit, these laws should be written on our heart. The problem is that religion has grieved and quenched His Spirit so that people are not heeding to how Yah is truly leading them. I'm going to read more scriptures about this just so you can see how much He cared about guarding His laws. If you diligently heed the voice of Yahuah your Elohim and do what is right in His sight, give ears to His commandments and keep all His statutes, I will put none of the diseases on which I have brought on the Egyptians. For I am Yahuah who heals you. Exodus chapter 15 verse 26. You shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, and shall not commit any of these abominations, either any of your own nation or any stranger who dwells among you. Leviticus chapter 18 verse 26. And you shall keep my statutes and perform them. I am Yahuah who sanctifies you. Leviticus chapter 20 verse 8. And that you remember and do all my commandments and be holy for your Elohim. Numbers chapter 15, verse 40. Now, O Israel, listen to the statutes and the judgments which I teach you to observe, that you may live, and go in and possess the land which Yahuah Elohim of your fathers is giving you. You shall not add to the word which I command you, nor take from it, that you may keep the commandments of Yahuah your Elohim which I command you. Your eyes have seen what Yahuah did at Baal Peor. For Yahuah your Elohim has destroyed from among you all the men who follow Baal of Peor. But you who held fast to Yahuah your Elohim are alive today, every one of you. Surely I have taught you statutes and judgments, just as Yahuah my Elohim commanded me, that you should act according to them in the land which you go to possess. Therefore be careful to observe them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples who will hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. That's Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 1 through 6. You see, I can keep going on and on with this, but I hope you understand that it was Yasharel's responsibility to guard and keep his law. You cannot come into this faith and say you follow Yahuah and now believe that you can say you believe in Jesus and you will be accepted while you ignore everything that his father has declared. Yahusha did not do this. If you follow and believe in Yahusha, you will do as he did, and he guarded his father's laws and he kept them. The next thing I want you to understand is that there is one Torah for all. One ordinance shall be for you of the assembly, and for the stranger who dwells with you, an ordinance forever throughout your generations. As you are, so shall the stranger be before Yahuah. One law and one custom shall be for you, and for the stranger who dwells with you. Numbers chapter 15, verses 15 and 16. It is important to understand that Yasharel had strangers, Gentiles, people from the other nations, that clung to them as they escaped from Egypt and came into their land. The other nations were not able to live in a different way just because they were not kin by blood to Yasharel. The Torah was one for all. Now it's important to understand that when the apostles built the church, they did taggle over this argument. I spoke about this in part 1 of this Torah segment. So they agreed that they did not need to put requirements on the assembly of believers, like the requirement of circumcision. And so yes, there are differences. But one thing that must be understood and kept is doing what Yahuah loves and abstaining from what Yahuah hates. None of us can engage in activity that our Father hates and then expect to be accepted by him. This is why you understand his Torah, so you understand him better. Nobody wants to make you Israel and circumcise you if you don't desire in your heart to be circumcised. Like back in the day, that would have been a hard task for all those men coming into belief in Messiah to be circumcised with no anesthesia. In that activity of the flesh, it still wouldn't get down to the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter being circumcised in your heart, truly loving Yahuah and what he desires. That's what's important. Let me also bring this up here because it's important. I want this to be understood by the Hebrew Israelites who try to deny salvation to the Gentiles. When you do this, you deny your own Torah, and you're going to be rejected by Yah. He has made commands in his Torah, not just for Yasharel, but for the foreigners, the strangers. He accepted them if they submitted to him. So if you think you're going to be accepted in his kingdom while you have made it your business to push them out, you have a problem on your hands. Repent and do not go against his Torah. If you need more scriptures on this, I can give you more. Just ask. Okay, let's keep going. Next thing to understand as a law for Yasharel is that they were to teach their children. And these words which I command you today shall be in your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 6 and 7. Also, only take heed to yourself and diligently keep yourself, lest you forget the things your eyes have seen, unless they depart from your heart all the days of your life. And teach them to your children and your grandchildren. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 9. It is important that we raise up our children in Yahuah's ways. We cannot just serve him personally and then forget to teach our children how to as well. What do you think happens when we do that? If you don't know, just look at the generation of children today. Today, we have multiple generations of children who don't know anything about Yah except that they are supposed to go to church and believe in Jesus. That's what they know. And because that's all they know, each generation gets worse and they get lost. We never passed down anything to our children so that they knew Yahuah. And that's honestly because they didn't know him. Not our parents, nor our grandparents. They just hoped that we would go to church because they did. That's what they passed down. Go to church. This command of the Torah was important so that Yasharel continued to raise up families that obeyed and honored Yahuah. So he commanded them to teach their children. He should be so much a part of our life that we should talk about him all the time. When we sit in our house, when we walk or drive in our cars, when we get up in the morning or start our day. Yahuah must be the central theme in our lives. This is commanded so that we know him and the generations after him will know him as well. Let me ask you, does keeping this law make me legalistic? Or maybe you feel you can pick the laws that make sense to you and the ones that don't. Either way, teach your children about Yahuah. Make him the central theme and priority of your home. Okay, the next thing that is important as we keep this command is to follow the command of reading the Torah. And Moses commanded them, saying, at the end of every 7 years, at the appointed time in the year of release, at the Feast of Tabernacles, when all Israel comes to appear before Yahuah your Elohim in the place which he chooses, you shall read this law before all Israel in their hearing. Gather the people together, men and women and little ones, and the stranger who is within your gates, that they may hear and that they may learn to fear Yahuah your Elohim, and carefully observe all the words of this law, and that their children who have not known it may hear and learn to fear Yahuah your Elohim as long as you live in the land which you cross the Jordan to possess. It's Deuteronomy chapter 31, verses 10 through 13. Man, can you imagine if all these churches actually kept this feast and actually practiced reading the Torah to their congregants so they understood Yah and understood what he has proclaimed? This was something that Yasharel was committed to as a whole every 7 years. But in understanding this command, you must understand why. We are to read the Torah so that those who have not known it may hear and learn to fear Yahuah. They didn't all have Bibles in their hands like we do today. So the reading of the Torah was important during the feast. That sounded like a great and awesome time when they were not in rebellion. Anyways, the command is to read his Torah, so read it. Read it often. The purpose of this law is so that we know it and we learn to fear Yahuah, so practice this individually and collectively by reading it in your home. You must understand the purpose of his commands, from the command of them making tassels or writing the commands on the doorposts and the gates. They didn't have printing presses and Bibles in everyone's hands, so he gave them commands that were about helping them remember him. The purpose of these commands are for us to do what we must in order to remember his Torah. You must understand him. Now, you should understand that he did not tolerate those in Yasharel that deliberately defied his Torah. But the person who does anything presumptuously, whether he's native born or a stranger, that one brings reproach on Yahuah, and he shall be cut off from among his people. Because he has despised the word of Yahuah and has broken his commandment, that person shall be completely cut off. His guilt shall be upon him. Numbers chapter 15, verses 30 through 31. People may hear this and say, well, we're not to do this today because we have a new covenant. But they only prove themselves to be hypocrites or ignorant of the word. Because Paul, the one they use as their basis of rejecting the Torah, he actually says this. It is actually reported that there is sexual immorality among you, and such sexual immorality as is not even named among the Gentiles, that a man has his father's wife, and you are puffed up and have not rather mourned, that he who has done this deed might be taken away from among you. For I indeed, as absent in body, but present in spirit, have already judged, as though I were present, him who has so done this deed. In the name of our Adon, Yahusha the Messiah, when you are gathered together, along with my spirit, with the power of our Adon Yahusha the Messiah, deliver such a one to Satan for the destruction of the flesh, that his spirit may be saved in the day of the Adon Yahusha. Your glorying is not good. Do you not know that a little leaven leavens the whole lump? Therefore, purge out the old leaven, that you may be a new lump, since you are truly unleavened. For indeed, Messiah, our Passover, was sacrificed for us. Therefore, let us keep the feast, not with the old leaven, nor with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. I wrote to you in my epistle not to keep company with sexually immoral people. Yet I certainly did not mean with the sexually immoral people of this world, or with the covetous, or extortioners, or idolaters, since then you would need to go out of the world. But now I have written to you not to keep company with anyone named a brother who is sexually immoral, or covetous, or an idolater, or a reviler, or a drunkard, or an extortioner, not even to eat with such a person. For what have I to do with judging those also who are outside? Do you not judge those who are inside? But those who are outside, Elohim judges. Therefore, put away for yourselves the evil person. That's 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 1 through 13. As you read this, where do you think that this way of thinking comes from? This comes from an intolerance of sin and rebellion that Yasharel was commanded to have. Today, because we reject the Torah, we have a complete tolerance of sin, and everyone basically says you can't judge anyone else. And guess what that has produced? Immorality and rebellion in our faith, claiming to be worshipers of the Most High, is completely condoned and tolerated now. If we were to follow the Torah, we would not keep them in our assembly and call them brothers or sisters. And that's why sin is in the abundance today. Most churches today, their pastors and church leadership, they live in sin. A church I used to go to in Miami, the pastor was divorced from his wife and literally would sleep around with the women in his church. What do you think was prevalent in that church? People sleeping around. The people should have been leaving the church, but instead they condoned it, and that sin just spread throughout the church. We cannot condone sin and immorality amongst those who call themselves following Yah. Sin and rebellion within the body must be judged, and it must not be tolerated. Okay, so let's keep going. Let's understand the part from the Torah that Yasharel never understood, which is exactly why they wound up crucifying the Messiah sent to them. We are commanded that there must be a circumcision of the heart. And now, Israel, what does Yahuah your Elohim require of you? But to fear Yahuah your Elohim, to walk in all his ways and to love him, to serve Yahuah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul, and to keep the commandments of Yahuah and his statutes, which I command you today for your good. Indeed, heaven and the highest heavens belong to Yahuah your Elohim, also the earth with all that is in it. Yahuah delighted only in your fathers to love them, and he chose their descendants after them, you above all peoples, as it is this day. Therefore, circumcise the foreskin of your heart, and be stiff-necked no longer. Deuteronomy chapter 10, verses 12 through 16. Also, and Yahuah your Elohim will circumcise your heart and the heart of your descendants to love Yahuah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul, that you may live. Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 6. You see, this is what he desired from Yasharel. This is what was to happen if we diligently follow him and understood him. We would circumcise our hearts. You see, circumcision was a physical sign of the covenant. Faith and repentance are spiritual signs. Our flesh was not the only thing to be circumcised. Marking the body as a sign of dedication to Yahuah is a great thing, but it meant nothing if there was no change of the heart. You see, the circumcisions that came after they received the Torah were not done with the children's consent. The child had no understanding of the covenant of circumcision because they were done when the child was 8 days old. They had no control over this and didn't even know what was going on. They were circumcised and wouldn't know what it meant without them being taught. It was the responsibility of the parents who allowed the circumcision to continue the covenant and later teach their sons. While this was a circumcision of the body of the baby, there was no guarantee it would be a circumcision of the heart. And this was the problem. The problem that you saw with Yasharel is that they never circumcised their hearts and cut it down for Yah. They served the Torah for themselves, to make themselves great, to show how righteous they were, but they did not do it to show Yah their love. This is what the Pharisees were, and this was their problem. They did not serve Yah, and that's why Yah said in this new covenant, he will remove our heart of stone. He prophesied, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will take the heart of stone out of your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you will keep my judgments and do them. That's Ezekiel chapter 36, verses 26 and 27. The circumcision of the heart was a commitment to walk in obedience to Yahuah, to consecrate yourself, to love Yahuah, and to serve him. We, therefore, now understand that the circumcision of the heart is an inner commitment that reflected itself on the outward lifestyle. You see, so many today claim to be under this new covenant, but their hearts are still not circumcised. When he puts his spirit within us, he says he will cause us to walk in his statutes and keep his judgments and to do them. We want to say our hearts are circumcised because it sounds good. But people today want Yah to serve them instead of them serving Yah. They don't want to walk in obedience to him. Many of them don't even want to take the time to understand what they should be obedient to. They don't want to set themselves apart to Yah, to love him and to serve him. This is what circumcising our hearts come with, and it is important that you do not deceive yourself into believing that this is what you are doing just because you believe in Jesus. Don't lie to yourself. Most people call following his Torah legalistic, and they reject it. But how could following his Torah be wrong when we are doing what he has commanded us to do? If I am saying I'm following his Torah and therefore circumcising my heart, the only people that will come against it are either people who don't know him or people that hate him. Don't be either. We must circumcise our hearts. All right, let's keep going. Now, as we go through the Torah, let's list some of the things that Yahuah hates and he did not tolerate from Yasharel. Cursing your parents. For everyone who curses his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. He has cursed his father or his mother. His blood shall be upon him. That's Leviticus chapter 20, verse 9. So children who were completely rebellious and did not honor their parents, they were not tolerated. Because if that child did not honor their parents, first off, they were breaking Yah's fifth command that he etched in stone. But in their rebellion, they were also not following the rest of his Torah, and they would be in rebellion. These type of children would grow like a cancer that would not stop growing, and it would create continuous rebellion. This goes back to why Yahusha said, "He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me." Matthew chapter 10, verse 37. You say you might have read this before, but you probably did not understand this in full without understanding the Torah. Those families who love their children more than Yahuah would not give their rebellious children up, and they would let them grow to be more rebellious. Now, of course, we do not live in the same time where we execute our children for their rebellion. Absolutely not. But we cannot tolerate and condone it either. We don't just justify rebellion and support them through it because we love them. If we love them, we would not tolerate their rebellion. Because not only do we love Yah and we want his kingdom to grow, but we also know what will happen to our children in the long run if they live in that rebellion. They will be rejected by him and they will not come into the kingdom. We do not tolerate sin and rebellion or children dishonoring their parents. What Yahuah also does not tolerate is murder and killing. He who strikes a man so that he dies shall surely be put to death. However, if he did not lie in wait, but Elohim delivered him into his hand, then I will appoint for you a place where he may flee. But if a man acts with premeditation against his neighbor to kill him by treachery, you shall take him from my altar that he may die. Exodus chapter 21, verses 12 through 14. Also, but if he strikes him with an iron implement so that he dies, he is a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death. And if he strikes him with a stone in the hand, by which one could die, and he does so die, he is a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death. Or if he strikes him with a wooden hand weapon, by which one could die, and he does die, he is a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death. The avenger of blood himself shall put the murderer to death. When he meets him, he shall put him to death. If he pushes him out of hatred, or while lying in wait, hurls something at him so that he dies, or in enmity he strikes him with his hand so that he dies, the one who struck him shall surely be put to death. He is a murderer. The avenger of blood shall put the murderer to death when he meets him. However, if he pushes him suddenly without enmity, or throws anything at him without lying in wait, or uses a stone by which a man could die, throwing it at him without seeing him, so that he dies, while he was not his enemy or seeking his harm, then the congregation shall judge between the manslayer and the avenger of blood according to these judgments. Numbers chapter 35, verses 16 through 24. People have a hard time with understanding Yah's commandments. They hear "thou shalt not kill," but then don't understand when Israel killed the other nations as they went into their land. And they also didn't understand when people would die according to the Torah. You see, he has specified and explained all instances in his Torah. So when someone doesn't understand, it's only because they haven't read his Torah. He makes it abundantly clear in regards to all cases. The point is that he did not tolerate the murder or killing of anyone within Yasharel that was not held in judgment first. Another thing not condoned is adultery and rape. Adultery. If a man is found lying with a woman married to a husband, then both of them shall die, the man that lay with the woman and the woman. So you shall put away the evil from Israel. Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 22. Adultery and rape. If a young woman who is a virgin is betrothed to a husband, and a man finds her in the city and lies with her, then you shall bring them both out to the gate of that city, and you shall stone them to death with stones. The young woman, because she did not cry out in the city, and the man, because he humbled his neighbor's wife. So you shall put away the evil from among you. Deuteronomy chapter 22, verses 23 and 24. Rape. But if a man finds a betrothed young woman in the countryside, and the man forces her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. But you shall do nothing to the young woman. There is in the young woman no sin deserving of death. But just as when a man rises against his neighbor and kills him, even so is this matter. For he found her in the countryside, and betrothed young woman cried out, but there was no one to save her. Deuteronomy chapter 22, verses 25 through 27. That all should be self-explanatory. This is easily understood because of the laws in the land today. But what Yahuah does not accept, which is completely different from the laws of the land in America today, is whoring. Do not prostitute your daughter to cause her to be a harlot, lest the land fall in harlotry and the land become full of wickedness. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 29. Prostitution. There shall be no ritual harlot of the daughters of Israel, or a perverted one of the sons of Israel. Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 17. You see, he does not tolerate this. But America has whored out the women of Yasharel. They have the women of Yasharel loving the culture of whoredom and prostitution. Today, the major culture of women is to be a whore. Women need to wake up and recognize that you are being a child of Babylon, followers of Sodom and Gomorrah. And the minute us men stop liking it and fall victim to their whorish behaviors, it will all stop. If we stop giving it attention and retreat it with disgust, it will stop. Our enemy whores them out, and we give them views and attention, showing that we support it. It all needs to stop. Let's continue. Yahuah also does not tolerate kidnapping. He who kidnaps a man and sells him, or if he is found in his hand, shall surely be put to death. Exodus chapter 21, verse 16. That's self-explanatory. He also does not tolerate stealing. And Yahuah spoke to Moses, saying, if a person sins and commits a trespass against Yahuah by lying to his neighbor about what was delivered to him for safekeeping, or about a pledge, or about a robbery, or if he has extorted from his neighbor, or if he has found what was lost and lies concerning it, and swears falsely, in any of these things that a man may do in which he sins, then it shall be, because he has sinned and is guilty, then he shall restore what he has stolen, or the thing which he has extorted, and what was delivered to him for safekeeping, or the lost thing which he had found, or all that about which he has sworn falsely. He shall restore its full value, add 1/5 more to it, and give it to whomever it belongs on the day of his trespass offering. Leviticus chapter 6, verses 1 through 5. If a man delivers to his neighbor money or articles to keep, and it is stolen out of the man's house, if the thief is found, he shall pay double. If the thief is not found, then the master of the house shall be brought to the judges to see whether he has put his hand into his neighbor's goods. Exodus chapter 22, verses 7 and 8. The culture that we have today in America is not a culture of Yasharel. It is a culture of Babylon. We must flee Babylon and not take part in her ways. Also, Yahuah does not tolerate hatred toward your brother. You shall not hate your brother in your heart. You shall surely rebuke your neighbor and not bear sin because of him. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 17. He does not tolerate vengeance or bearing a grudge. You shall not take vengeance nor bear any grudge against the children of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Yahuah. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18. Yahusha handles this on his Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of the judgment. But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a sin shall be in danger of the judgment. And whoever says to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council. But whoever says, you fool, shall be in danger of hellfire. Therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go your way. First be reconciled to your brother and then come and offer your gift. Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 through 24. This is an example of Yahusha keeping the Torah, but showing how it was meant to be used in order to circumcise our hearts. This wasn't a new command. This was in the Torah. When it is saying, you shall surely rebuke your neighbor, it is saying the way to avoid letting hatred build up was to confront the person. Ideally, this would involve resolving the issue face to face. However, it could involve taking the issue to court to settle it legally rather than taking it to one's own hand or allowing it to fester in one's heart. This is one thing I deal with Christians all the time. I like to deal with issues face to face and resolve them so there's no hatred. But Christians I know, many of them family, want to ignore issues and just hate you and deal with you negatively while they never actually dealt with the problem. They don't listen to Yahuah, nor do they follow the Torah. They're just lawless. Let's keep going. Here's a big one. Yahuah does not tolerate magic and witchcraft. When you come into the land which Yahuah your Elohim is giving you, you shall not learn to follow the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone who makes his son or his daughter pass through the fire, or one who practices witchcraft, or a soothsayer, or one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or one who conjures spells, or a medium, or a spiritist, or one who calls up the dead. For all who do these things are an abomination to Yahuah, and because of these abominations, Yahuah your Elohim drives them out from before you. You shall be blameless before Yahuah your Elohim. For these nations which you will dispossess, listen to soothsayers and diviners, but as for you, Yahuah your Elohim has not appointed such for you. That's Deuteronomy chapter 18 verses 9 through 14. Another scripture, a man or woman who is a medium, who has familiar spirits, shall surely be put to death. They shall stone them with stones. Their blood shall be upon them. Leviticus chapter 20 verse 27. You see, he doesn't tolerate any of this type of behavior. There is a complete intolerance to it. But today, I've heard people say they're Christian witches. People use elements of witchcraft in their spiritual life and believe they're serving Yahuah. They are mistaken, and they are headed to judgment. Do not be misled because you don't understand him. He also did not allow Yasharel to have tattoos and cuttings. You shall not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor tattoo any marks on you. I am Yahuah. Leviticus chapter 19 verse 28. You see, we get these wicked customs from Babylon, following the other nations. Because this nation claimed to be a Christian nation, all these wicked things these people did, people just believe it's okay. I'm not saying you're going to hell for having your tattoo. I mean, we've all made mistakes. There's nothing you can do about it. I'm saying, as a follower of him right now, don't go and get a tattoo and think you're actually following him. You're in rebellion. There's a lot more I can cover. I do not want to overwhelm. I wanted to make sure that these things were really understood so that the understanding of Yahuah and what he loves and what he hates is better understood. I must say that as we get closer to Yah's kingdom, I can no longer tolerate the false mindset of believers who reject Yahuah's laws and his statutes. These things, if we follow them and understand them, would make us a better people overall, a better world. Not one of these things makes us oppressed. Satan wants us to live in rejection of Yahuah's Torah and teaches a lifestyle of do what thou wilt. But look at the world today and look how wicked everything is, and you see what that doctrine brings. If you reject the Torah, then you don't truly know Yah. You live in lawlessness. When you understand his Torah, you understand how to live a life more aligned to him. Now let's be clear that we do not justify ourselves by keeping the law. Our salvation is not tied to the law, but by belief in Messiah and following him. But Messiah followed the law. All his words were in reference to the Torah. But people don't have a clue because they don't read the Torah. He did not come with some new doctrine. We cannot live lawlessly and reject the Torah. We must live in Yah's truth and accept what he has said and declared. The more you study and read his word, the more you will understand him and follow him better. I'm going over all this because it's extremely important. Our churches and our pastors have failed us. They are the modern-day Pharisees that have rejected our Messiah, again, leading those who follow them into judgment. They have not taught us the word properly, and they have taught us to live in rejection of the truth and made his law seem like something that we can't keep and something that we don't need to understand. I hope that as you are going through this series, you can clearly see how false that is, and you are now yearning more to go back and read his word on your own and learn about him in a more truthful, complete way that does not avoid his Torah, but one that embraces it. Not looking at his commands as burdens, but understanding why he has said and declared these things. And then through your understanding, you live in more obedience to him. It is time to live in truth. Do not reject his Torah. Love his Torah. Hate what Yahuah hates and love what Yahuah loves. If you do this, listen, you will be ready for him. So make sure that you do. Be blessed. Hallelujah. Praise Yah. Okay, thanks again for watching. If this has blessed you, please make sure to like this and share this video with others. If you haven't done so already, please make sure you subscribe to this channel. Yah willing, I upload every Friday. Also, please don't forget to follow this ministry on Facebook and Instagram, as well as on this website, truthunedited.com. As always, I want to thank you all who donate and support this ministry. Your contributions have been a sincere blessing, and I truly appreciate your support. I thank you for following Yah's call on your heart. Be blessed. Okay, thanks again everyone for watching. I love you all.